Okay, welcome. Thank you for being here. We're reminding everybody to silence their cell phones. And we are live streaming on Ukiah Unified's YouTube channel. And if you don't get to watch the whole thing, you're welcome to come back because there it is, saved for eternity on the internet. Let's see, the only thing that we really need to say, public comment goes to Debbie Ornelas in the lovely mustard with green flowered shirt. And I am not Tyler Nelson, but it's a new year. And so I was just elected president. Megan Van Sant was elected vice president, and Zoe Fernandez was elected clerk of the board. And that happened before we went into closed session today. But we only serve terms for a year, so that's as much as you have to put up with us. Then we're done. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Our items from closed session will be reported out at the end. And now that we are reconvening, we'll do the flag salute. Excited. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next time we'll select somebody. Cool. Is there a motion to approve the agenda, either as submitted or with any things to be held back? Trustee Arkin.
I need to have, in the consent item, H26, voted on separately. Which one? H26, taken out and voted separately. It's, could be a conflict of interest.
Okay, so given that change, do you also make an motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Oh, that's a good idea, yes. Other than that, yes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Our student advisor report.
Hello.
There we go. Perfect.
Hi everybody. I wanted to start off by saying that the high school's mock trial team had its first scrimmage competition of the year on Saturday at the courthouse. Last year, the team made it to the Sacramento State competition for the first time in 10 years, so that's the goal again for this year. During the two trials on Saturday, we faced off against Sonoma Valley High School and Middletown High School, and these two teams also made it to state last year, so it was an exciting thing for a mostly new team. The qualifying trials for states will be held in late February of next year. Additionally, UHS band, led by Miss McCombs, had their annual winter concert last Wednesday at the high school. Ella Nelson, who's a tuba player and senior, shared with me that when the band played a jazz song, specifically, a large portion of the crowd got up and started dancing, and she said that it went really well because of that. On Friday, the high school's performing arts, including choir, drama, and band, put on a show for their peers in two different school-wide assemblies, which was a great event because it exposes these arts to students who might not have known they were interested in them, and is additionally just a fantastic show for the rest of us. The high school choir also had their winter concert on Friday, along with the Pomalita choir. Winter Ball happened 2 Saturdays ago, and had a huge turnout of 563 students, which is a major fundraiser for the high school ASB. I was also informed by administration that there were no negative interactions or occurrences throughout the whole night, which really makes it a success for everyone involved. UHS's collaboration with the Ukiah Christmas effort ended today, with many classrooms and clubs adopting a local family for which they buy a multitude of gifts for in order to enrich that family's Christmas. So we'll be delivering those to the Christmas effort this week. Finals week officially begins tomorrow, and the high school's Link Crew organization, which was created to provide support for the incoming ninth graders throughout the entirety of their first year, is also offering free hot chocolate each morning to all students, as well as bringing therapy dogs to campus to relieve anyone's stress during this important week.
Thank you, Ava. Any questions? Okay. Any public comment for items not on the agenda? Okay, you're not coming up to make a public comment? Okay. CSEA, we don't have anybody. Oh, okay. So we'll just go on then to Ukiah Teachers Association. No, I don't think so.
Hello.
Perfect.
Hello, Board. Superintendent Kubin. UTA just turned in our votes for the calendar, and we approved Calendar B over Calendar A, which means students will be starting 2 days in the first week of school. Teachers will have 3 days of prep time. We have coming up CTA's Good Teacher Conference and the New Educator Conference, both in February. And we're looking forward to collaborating with the district again to send some teachers. We can have as many go as we can afford. The New Teacher Conference can be any teacher up to 5 years of teaching. So that, I think that's just brand new. And then I will need to leave you folks early. I apologize. I have a sick kitty who has timed medication. So I will be going to deal with Princess Bella Diva Blue Fluffy Flanks. And I apologize, I need to leave.
Thank you, Terry. Any questions? We wish her a speedy recovery. Good luck with your kitty. And do we expect somebody from CSEA? There's no one here. That is true. Didn't know if we were supposed to be stalling, but no more stalling. We will welcome Dan Stearns to give our leadership team report.
Good evening, School Board. Mr. Diaz, nice to see you. Good evening, Superintendent.
Thank you.
And I'm going for 20 minutes, and I'm going to sing and dance. I heard that's...
Thank God.
In terms of leadership update, we've done some really deep work on planning for the strategic plan. And this is, if you've not been kind of up to date on what's going on, these are sort of the really 3 questions and 1 lens that came out of the 3.5 days work with Steve Zweiback. A big group was with him for 2.5 days, and then a smaller writing team has worked with him for about a half day or so. But the 3 big questions that we asked were, how can we focus on creating a district culture that supports college and career readiness? What does that even look like at kindergarten, first grade, and second grade? As we looked at the data, it was super clear that math student achievement had to be a focus. As we looked at all kinds of numbers with subgroups and grades and middle school and so on, and just trying to figure out what we can do in the future to improve in math student achievement, and then also focusing on student equity issues. All of that under the lens of trying to still narrow the focus, wanting to tackle these big issues, but trying to perhaps reduce, as someone said, 20% of our projects and initiatives, et cetera. That was also very clear in all the conversations that came out. So it was big picture, and then it boiled down to those 3 questions, and then also with the lens of narrowing the focus. More to follow with DAC in the spring for sure. In terms of school culture, had something really cool happen on Friday night. Elizabeth DeVinny, our digital media teacher at Eagle Peak, won the Region 1 California League of Middle Schools Educator of the Year, and that's kind of her village with her mother-in-law Jenny DeVinny, a former principal, her colleagues, Miss Merritt, who married Mr. Merritt at Pomalita, and Miss Kohler, our math teacher, and then Liz's parents who've moved up from San Jose, and Liz's husband, Carson DeVinny. So that's kind of the village, and It was Eagle Peak's first recognition to have an Educator of the Year, and so she's going to be on to state in February. She's a very strong candidate, so we're going to give it a go at state, and who knows, maybe we'll go to DC. Anyway, she teaches digital media at Eagle Peak, one of our STEM electives.
Very exciting.
Yeah, it's awesome. We, through the coordination of the county and Superintendent Cuban, we had an escape bus join us for 2 days at Eagle Peak. It was awesome to have 80 or 90 students work in teams to try to solve puzzles and different challenges to escape the bus. And we had some of our Native American students, some of our GATE students, some of our leadership students, some of our after-school program students attend. And there's all these interesting challenges and puzzles that kids have to solve. We actually think that a student-created escape room is going to be a really interesting and powerful 8th grade interdisciplinary STEM project. So our 8th graders are going to be doing that in the 3rd quarter. They're going to create their own escape rooms where they design mathematical challenges, actually challenges from all 4 disciplines: social studies, math, science, and language arts. And so looking forward to having our 8th graders do that. So that was a totally fun experience. We definitely want to bring the escape bus back, and thank you, Superintendent, for working with the county to bring us the escape bus. That's it.
Any questions?
Questions, anybody?
Acceptance of donations. Here we go. Thank you, Principal Stearns. Okay, now we're going to do our donations, if I can locate them here. Dun, 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 dun. Donations list. Our donations this month totaled $6,003.55. And maybe rather than, let's see, let's just name the donor publicly. And if you're curious, you can look at the donations list, which is in your agenda packet, which is online, if you really want to know. But our donors this month are North American Organics, Life Touch National School Studios, Your Cause LLC trustee for PG&E, eScript, George and Ruth Bradford Foundation, Ukiah Co-op Natural Foods. Can't tell what that is. Who's at 511 South Orchard? Oh, that's us. It just says foundation. Ukiah Educational Foundation. Jill Damian, California Apparel. Randy Kaufman, care of Better Homes and Gardens Realty. Schatz Bakery, Little Caesars Pizza, Slam Dunk Pizza. Paula Flores Mata with Care for Her. Kim McKentry, Community First Credit Union. Rosemary Grappaneff Tango Beauty Bar. Savings Bank. Kim Max, care of Savings Bank. Veronica Mata. Lisa Doster, care of Savings Bank. Charla Reed, care of Savings Bank. Scissor Hands. Urban Queen, Tammy Mee, care of MCOE. Food Depot and Mountain Mikes. Is there a motion to approve said donations?
I move that we approve the donations.
Thank you.
I'll
Thank you,
second that.
Trustee Barrett. Thank you, Trustee Diaz. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Now we have the always fascinating first interim budget report.
Okay, good evening, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. But budgets are always very exciting reports, so let's see. Okay, going through our agenda really quickly. Since this is my first time through, I kind of took what Penny had done at first interim last year and just kind of updated it, so hopefully it looks pretty familiar. I won't start making wholesale changes for a couple more months at least. So no, things are, I like how she presents this to you, so I just tried to follow along. We'll talk about what's new with first interim, talk about the general fund, talk about what's changed a little bit, talk about our multi-year projections, talk about budget reductions, which I'll go ahead and foreshadow. I don't think we have to really worry about too much at this time. Talk about contingencies and our other funds, and then our next steps. So first we'll start off with, I think we'll call this the Penny Memorial slide. I've been told we have to always use this slide at every budget presentation. It's a tradition, so we will keep this going. I actually think it's a pretty cool slide. I might even steal it for Healdsburg for Wednesday night, so. But don't tell them where I got it, so.
Really, the
It's
best part
trademarked.
for us is the "we are here," because it just orients us, and we're like, oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah, I like that. I thought of making it a little bit bigger even, but I thought, no, hopefully we could all find that, so. Anyway, so we are at the first interim cycle. This is the first of 2 chances we get to update the budget during the year. We came back to you with the original budget back in June, and obviously we didn't know everything then, so we know a little more now. There are still a few things we don't totally know, but definitely know a lot more than we did back in May and June. What's new with first interim? Well, the couple things I didn't put on this slide, which probably would have been helpful, is, well, I'm new, so it's the first time you're hearing me drone on about the budget for a while. And then also Christy Bryant, it's her first time in the big chair across the hall doing most of the work on this, and she's been fabulous to work with. And I know she did a really good job on this and learned a few things too. We had some great conversations. I'd ask my dumb questions, she'd giggle a little bit, then she'd tell me what the answer was. So it's a good relationship, I like it. So what's new? The books are closed on last year. The first important thing is we know what our real beginning balance is now. Any changes that we've received since the adopted budget, we've identified and we've made the adjustments for. We've looked at staffing pretty closely since that is the large majority of our budget. Updated the multi-year to reflect some of those things, and then we will certify the district's position. So looking at the unrestricted general fund, our LCFF revenue is up considerably over last year, $2.5 million. That even though the COLA decreased, the fact that the state's fully funding everything finally made a big difference for our budget. So that allowed us to do the 3.73% raises we did this year, and as well as increasing our supplemental concentration grant to serve all of our students. So we were planning to put more money into Fund 17 than we can afford to do now. We're only going to be able to do about $215,000, and we'll talk about our reserve levels later, but that was one significant change. Expenditures have increased pretty dramatically. Again, the 3.73% raise that we talked about, we'll definitely do that to our budget. And then the pressure on the unrestricted general fund, which I'm sure you've heard about and we'll be talking about in the future, due primarily to the salary increase. And the salary increase's effect on the special ed budget in particular increases that contribution that was required. The unrestricted general fund, the good news is we still do have a positive ending balance. We still have reserves close to 9%. We knew we'd be a little bit under based on the AB 1200 we did last month for the raises. And we think by the time the year is done, that will be 9% or even above once everything shakes out. But for now, we're showing 8.73%, still well above the state's required 3% reserve, but not quite the 9% that you've mandated for the district. Let's talk about the LCFF changes. There will be a COLA for next year as it currently stands, which will be 3%, a little bit less than this year's COLA of 3.26%. And then in 21-22, the COLA is supposed to decrease a little bit again. So that's going to put a little bit of tension on our budget when the LCFF revenue is not keeping pace with our other cost increases, like STRS and PERS and things like that. It's going to put a little pressure on the budget going forward, but nothing that we can't handle with some forethought. In terms of getting into some of the numbers, the unrestricted general fund is a little more healthy than back in June. Our revenues are about $800,000 higher, due primarily. So Governor Newsom did something interesting this year. He took us away from these one-time pots of money he was giving to districts because he doesn't believe in that. He believes in having money only for certain things. So this year we did not get that one-time money we've got in the last several years. But then he came around on the other side and said, gee, special ed's underfunded, so we're going to give you some money for special ed, but it's not really for special ed. It's based on your special ed preschool count from the prior year, but it's going to come in as unrestricted general fund dollars, even though it's quote unquote for special ed. So we can use it however we choose to. The state is urging districts to use it towards their special ed encroachment, which is what we'll probably be doing with it anyway. So it's just an interesting way of not doing one-time money, but then doing one-time money. So So I'm not sure what that foreshadows for future years with the budget with Governor Newsom. It'll be interesting to see what happens. On the expenditure side, in the unrestricted general fund, certainly salaries and benefits increased by $1.3 million due to that 3.73% increase. We did have a reserve of 2 positions built into the budget initially in case we had to hire a couple additional teachers. We did not have to fill those positions, so we've taken those back out of the budget at this time. And then the other salary and benefit adjustments are just based on the actual hires. You know, back in May and June, we don't always know who's going to get hired and where they're going to be on the salary schedule, so we have to make some estimates. Materials and supplies is actually decreased by $673,000. Some of that is how we just choose to do our budgeting. If we're not sure how folks are going to spend site allocations or categorical programs, we put it into the 4,000s at first, and then as we get more information, we start moving it around to salaries and benefits or to services and other operating expenditures. The salary increase did require some of the material budget that we talked about to be used up to cover those salary increases in categorical programs and in site discretionary. And then services and operating expenditures are up about $286,000. Some different contracts and things that we've talked about over the last several months are now showing up in the budget.
Could you repeat what you said about site discretionary again? Did you pull some from site discretionary?
If
to
they have
cover the
positions
1.3?
funded out of their site discretionary, those positions now cost 3.73% more.
Right.
So it puts a little bit of a strain on their site discretionary.
Got it.
Yeah, I didn't
Thank
say
you.
that very well, thank you. Capital outlay, we bought a new postage machine, so there's a $16,000 bump there. That's an expensive postage machine. And then other outgo, we were able to decrease those expenses a little bit. So overall, our expenditures are up $928,000 over the initial budget. So moving on, looking at the contributions that the unrestricted general fund has to make to other programs within and outside of the general fund. As I mentioned before, we can't do quite as much to Fund 17. The requirements to the adult ed fund is a little bit less than it was at adoption. The cafeteria fund is a little bit higher. I think some sub costs and some food costs and things like that, plus the strain that those 3 days we lost, those put a strain on the budget for food service as well. So if the state comes back and backfills us for that, that should drop back down. On the general fund side, some of our programs that we thought were going to encroach, or require a contribution, don't in some cases, or the contribution has changed. You see special ed has gone up from 5.3 to 6.5 million, and again, that's all due to the salary schedule increase. Otherwise, things are pretty much what we had expected back in June. On the multi-year, things still look, what I would say, really good, especially at this time of year. If you go back and look at where we thought we'd be this time last year, where we thought we'd be now, we're much healthier financially than we thought we would be. Again, that's some conservative budgeting. If we're not sure, we're going to understate revenue a little bit and maybe overstate expense a little bit until we get more information. All told, we are deficit spending by $1.1 million this year in the unrestricted general fund. And for next year, we're projecting to drop that down to $23,000. That'll be relying heavily on some money coming in from Fund 17. And then in 2021-22, we're projecting to be $0, no deficit spending. So maybe the most important part of this presentation for tonight is just looking at the multi-year and what it means for our reserves. So you see at the end of 1920, we will have $7.4 million in Fund 17, or 8.74%. Again, not quite the 9%, but not too far off. 2021, we have to borrow pretty heavily from our quote-unquote savings account in Fund 17. We'll be down to 6.94%, and then down to 6.4% in 21-22. Again, that's about what we saw when we did the AB 1200s last month, and it's really early, especially when you think about 21-22. A lot of things will change between now and then. So based on this, do we need to make budget reductions in the next couple of years? And I would say at this point, I don't think we need to worry about convening a committee and really making draconian cuts. I think it's always good to be smart about how we're spending our money. And if there's discretion, we will consider it long and hard like we always do. But I think otherwise, based on what we know today, we don't have to get too crazy with budget reductions. Again, we're $219,000 short of our 9% this year. We're 1.7 million short of our 9% in 2021, and 2 million short in 21-22. But if we come back in second interim and see those numbers have grown or have even stayed the same, we'll talk more about budget and what that means for us. But I think for now, I think we're okay. Again, the structural deficit is due to pension costs increasing, salary schedule increases, and special ed being underfunded. Right? That doesn't go away. Even with that extra one-time money from the state, special ed still is not funded where it should be. And obviously, any savings we realize based on this budget now through the end of the year just helps us in the multi-year projections as well. One of the other stressors on our budget that we'll continue to talk about over the next couple of years is the minimum wage increase. The 3.73% that we did this year took a lot of that pressure off, but we're still not all the way there. The blue shows you that as of January 1st, 2021, minimum wage will be $14 per hour in the state. And right now we have 6 cells on our classified salary schedule that are less than that. And by January 1st of 2022, it'll be $15 per hour, and we have 4 additional cells underneath that. So that's something we'll be talking about in negotiations, and as we look at the salary formula over the next couple of years, we're about 3.8% away from being out of this hole. So that's a pretty big one-time increase for us, but we'll see how things play out. But again, we have some time to get more creative if we need to as well. As we've talked repeatedly about our unfunded facility needs, that hasn't gone away. The master plan in 17-18 said we needed to spend an awful lot of money on our facilities. I would say that bill has just gone up since then. It hasn't gone down, even with the work we've been doing. On the plus side, there is some potential state funding, and we're going to start working on getting in line to claim that money after the first of the year. And then the bond coming up in March. Hopefully that passes, and then there's some money for us to start investing in our facilities. But even then, you see that we're still going to be well short of where we need to be with our facilities. It's just kind of the first step in probably a multi-step, multi-phase reinvestment in ourselves.
Can you explain transformation? Sounds nice, but what does it mean?
I was hoping
We'd like
you
to
would
teach
know,
some
because
of
that's
that.
Oh, we,
I
really?
can explain that.
Oh, what is
Yes.
transformation?
Transformation are, if you look at our facilities master plan, there are code and maintenance issues like roof replacement, HVAC replacement, and then the transformative items in the facilities master plan have to do with an example would be at Ukiah, they would really like to have a health center there.
So one is like
To bring
boring,
services in, yes.
and the other one's more exciting and new.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you. Taking a quick look at the other funds, happy to report that all of the funds will be positive at the end of the year. So I don't think there's any huge red flags there at this point. Cafeteria, as we talked, will be a little bit tight, but hopefully things get better as the year progresses.
Question?
Yes.
What's the extra $730,000 in capital facilities? How did that show up?
You know, that's a great question. It has to do, I think, with, do you want to go?
Isn't it redevelopment funds?
Could be, yeah. I would think that goes into capital facilities. Plus, there's also, we're shifting some money around for the solar panels that we bought too, and that may be impacting that number a little bit.
So is that $2.3 million already planned for it?
Oops,
I
sorry.
can't remember.
Well, a part of it will go toward the South Valley project.
Okay,
Yeah, I think a lot of this money is probably already committed.
okay.
Yes.
So our next steps, we get the first look at the next budget next month. We're already hearing rumblings that some of the economic indicators that the downturn is coming are getting stronger. We know it's not going to be if it's coming, it's just when. Hopefully it stays off for another couple of years, but we have to be smart and have to get our reserves back up to that 9% because it is coming. We're already working on our enrollment projections, and Nicole is a whiz with her spreadsheets of what we're going to have in the way of students showing up next year. So that's pretty much done at this point, and we'll start looking at staffing based on that. We'll be coming back to you in March with the second interim report. And so based on all that, with the reserve of 8.74%, we're definitely positive still. And so I'd suggest we go with the positive certification for first interim.
Since you're familiar with other districts, and I'm only familiar with our own district, Is the 9% reserve, what's your opinion about that?
I think it's great that you guys did that. I think there are some districts that are going to be in trouble in a couple of years because they have not done that. Could it be a little bit higher? Sure. But you also want to take care of your employees, right? And that's the only way we could have increased that anymore. So I think it's actually great that we've done that. I think it's important that we get it restored as quickly as we can. But yeah, could it be a little higher? Sure. And that might be a conversation worth having at some point. We could do some studies on what other districts do. Healdsburg is a basic aid district, so it's kind of a whole different animal. So our requirement, we want to have 13.3%, which is kind of like a 5% reserve for economic uncertainties plus 1 month of expenses is where that came from. So I think the 9% for an
Non-basic.
LCFF district is probably a really good place. And,
Thank
Any other questions?
I just want to thank you for juggling 2 first interims at the same time with us in Healdsburg. We appreciate it, and for doing such a complete job.
great, thank you. Hopefully that one number wasn't from Healdsburg on the Fund 25. But thank you.
So I'm just looking to see if anybody
Yes.
wanted to make a motion.
I would like to make a motion to, are we approving?
To
Yes.
approve the
To approve
1920
interim
first interim budget?
For 1920, yes.
Excellent, thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, trustee Arkin. Any further questions or discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
You can stay right there, Steve.
And we can stay right there then, okay, and move on to the approval to increase revolving cash fund maximum limit.
Okay, this actually came from business staff. This was really precipitated by the adventures we had in October with loss of power and fires and things. We had to write some emergency payroll checks, and $5,000 does not go very far when you're writing emergency payroll checks. We spent all of that and needed to do a couple more checks we couldn't do. So while 15,000 might be a little higher than we'd like it to be, I think given our new normal of problems in the fall, problems in the spring with flooding, and needing to get checks out quickly sometimes, I think it's probably prudent for us, for a district our size, to have a little bit higher revolving account. So I'd like to recommend $15,000. It is very closely watched and safeguarded, requires 2 signatures, so it's, I think, pretty low risk and pretty highly needed given our situation.
I move approval to increase our revolving cash fund maximum limit to $15,000.
Okay.
I second it.
Motion and a second. Any questions? Are the 2 signatures, is one of them outside of fiscal?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
No other questions? Great. All those in favor of increasing to 15,000?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right,
Great, thank you.
thank you. And now Superintendent Cuban, can you tell us about the request for a funding increase for district informational mailer?
Yes, so in October, actually in November, Ukiah Unified Board placed Measure A on the March 2020 ballot. Prior to that meeting, we sent a district mailer out to all registered voters, informing them the board was going to be considering doing that and inviting them to our board meeting. We would like to do a follow-up mailer out to all registered voters, informing them that the board did take that action. And so this would just increase that contract and allow us to do this mailer out to registered voters, letting them know that the board took the action to place it on the March 2020 ballot.
Thank you. Questions? Okay.
No, but I will make a motion to approve the increase.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor for this informational only mailer?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Next, we move on to E1. Dashboard presentation. Katie Summer will be back.
A little tricky here.
Okay. Can I share one bit of good news before you start? I want to steal your thunder for a moment.
Go for it.
So Katie's going to show you that on the front page of our dashboard, we have no red.
Yeah, I noticed
Overall.
that.
Hear that?
So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for their hard work. We have a little red here and there, other places that we'll talk about, but on our front page overall, we have no red on our dashboard.
There's
So
very little orange, too.
we are very, very grateful to our staff and really proud of all the work that they do on a daily basis with our students.
Good evening, Superintendent Cuban and Board of Trustees. We do have a lot of good news on our dashboard in a couple areas that we need to continue to work on. All areas, but some more than others. So you also have a handout of the dashboard if you like paper as well. And tonight I'm just going to be presenting on the district's dashboard, and in the agenda online, you can go to the website there and look at schools as well. So today we'll just be mostly looking at the district as a whole and highlighting a few schools that have some really great improvement. So if you look at our chronic absenteeism dashboard, and you can see we have these little dials with the colors. And last year, our chronic absenteeism was at orange, and now we are at yellow. So on the dashboard, you can click, and it will take you down to the chronic absenteeism. And you can see that we combined, we're at 14.2%. And this is for students in grades K through 8. When we first started the dashboard 3 years ago, it did include the high school, but now the state revised this, and it's only K-8 students.
Why did they take out high school?
I think that they knew that it's pretty challenging at high school. And
They
I
felt
think
like the districts were less responsible.
it was more important to work on improving students in K-8 first, because their attendance gets better at high school if we improve in K-8. And so they changed that over. So just to let you know, because sometimes when we share data with you, it might look a little bit different because the dashboard's just showing K-8, and sometimes we'll show you K-12 data. So the other dashboard indicator next to that is graduation rate. And although it's yellow, it's slightly frustrating. I had to dig a little bit on this one. The graduation rate, the way it's calculated, has changed this year. So the first thing is that we did not decline, although we were green last year. Our percentage, you can see, maintained. We have about a 1/10 of a percentage point increase. But they changed the grid for what they considered medium, and it moved us down a level. So because it moved us down a level, they went from 90% to having to be at 95%, and you can see we went down a little bit. So that's why we're yellow. The other thing that's changed within the grad rate is how the grad rate is calculated. So students that are at South Valley have a 1-year grad rate calculation. So that includes students that are in 12th grade and any 11th grade students that graduate in that year. So they basically have a 1-year grad rate. And that makes sense because most DAS schools only have the students in grades 11 and 12. They don't have the students very long, like continuation schools. And then at the regular comprehensive high schools like Ukiah High, they've now done a combined graduation rate of 4 and 5 year. So that there had been a lot of discussion around adding a 5th year graduation rate. And what they decided to do was actually combine the two, which is a little hard to look at because it's hard to see did the 4-year improve and did the 5-year improve because they put them together. So the only thing that's a little, I feel like wasn't as fair when we worked on actually giving some input to the California Department of Ed around the dashboard. We said, yes, include 5th year seniors and 5th year grad rate. But what they've done with this graduation rate is that let's say you had 100 seniors and 95 of them graduated. And then you had 5 that went back and graduated in the 5th year. The denominator is not 100 students, it's 105 students. So those students are really almost in the denominator twice. instead of it making it, which would kind of help you look at and say, oh, we really did get all these kids graduated, it's a little muddied because they've increased the denominator. They were trying to figure out some way to combine the two but not give you as much credit for the fifth year is I think what they were trying to do. So that's really the biggest change. And there's one other change on the dashboard was the graduation rate calculation. It's also it's different than the four-year cohort graduation that is on the data quest. And that just got unembargoed, and we will be sharing that data to you via Friday communication. So that's a change that's happened. So we look forward to improving more and making sure our fifth-year seniors graduate as well, and hopefully more students graduate in 4 years. The other area that we've had great improvement in is the suspension rate, and suspension rate is K-12. In the prior year, we were orange district-wide, and we've moved to yellow. And you can see that our suspension rate was 5.4% and that we declined 3.5%, and that's good. We want to decline. So we worked very hard last year, all of our schools, on reducing our suspension rates. And this year, we have principal from Pomalita High School, Brian Barrett. We're piloting.
Middle school.
What did I say?
You said high school.
Sorry, Brian. Pomalita Middle School. But Pomalita's piloting the classroom there for alternatives to suspensions, and we're seeing a lot of great work at that, and I'm sure we'll report out to you about that this year as well. So that's another highlight around our suspension rate. And it's going to look, just to always let you know, it's going to look a little bit different than some of the other rates that we share with you, because they have some rules about students enrolled, like how long have they been enrolled in the school district, if it was continuous enrollment and not. So it'll be slightly different sometimes than data we might share with you, because the rules are just slightly different. But we're really happy to see that suspension rate go down. And other area of highlight is college and career readiness. So if we look over here, we can see that 42.6% of all of our students are college and career ready based on the indicator. And there's lots of different ways to become college and career ready. They all have to obviously have graduated from high school. And then there are a variety of ways that you can become college and career ready, including completing a CTE pathway and scoring a 2 or a 3 on the SBAC, scoring 3s on the SBAC, A through G completion, AP assessment. So that's a combination. But we're really happy to see that increase for all students in our district. And we'll continue to probably share some more information with you, more detailed information around college and career ready, just to get you up to speed on the indicator itself. The other area where we went from orange to yellow is English Language Arts. This includes students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 that are assessed on the Smarter Balanced Assessment. And we're really happy to see improvement there. We increased 7.1 points. And what those points are is all students get a scaled score. And that scaled score has a cut point at which they become proficient, or what we call standard met. And this, the way this is calculated is it looks at how close the students are on average to that level to be standard met, which is level 3. So it's a little bit confusing. It's not the percent of students that are proficient, but it's kind of like how close are either they getting to becoming proficient, or are they above proficiency. So we made a lot of improvements in English Language Arts. Ukiah Elementary School and Frank Zeke Elementary School had some really good improvement, and 7th grade at Pomalita. So we had some really good improvement in English Language Arts. Math, on the other hand, is our area of weakness that we need to continue to work on. You can see we basically maintained, we didn't go down, but we stayed at orange. We're pretty much flat. And some of the data we've shared to you before, where we're basically at about sixth grade, we're getting about 20% of our students proficient and then sort of staying there, and we're not moving. So that's been an area that's been identified through the strategic planning process to work on, continue to work on. So we'll have lots more as we move forward in our planning. And then the last indicator on here is the English learner progress. We don't have a dial yet because we've only had LPAC scores for 1 year. We will have them in the for next year's dashboard. And we have 47.9% of our students making progress. There are 4 levels when the student takes the LPAC. They receive a score, and there are 4 levels on the LPAC. To make progress, they've broken those levels down actually into 6 levels, and so students have to move up a level every year or become a level 4. And if they're at a level 4 and they stayed a level 4, that's good, and really they hopefully will be reclassified soon. So we are making good progress, and because there's not a lot to compare this one to, when we look at the state's at 48.3%, and we're just a smidge behind at 47.9%. So, and then you can also look at that we're at medium progress here between 45 and 55%. So we're making headway there, but we still have a lot of work to do, and we'll have more information next year as we can compare.
Will that be discussed in more detail with the DLAC, the district-wide?
The DLAC every year, they go over the scores and what the scores mean and what progress means for students. And then I think we've got them all on there. We did meet all of our local criteria, and we did share that with you in November. And then lastly, I just wanted to share some other good news, is that one of our metrics was to reduce the number of reds on the 5x5 grid, so that when we start looking at that, we're looking at all the subgroups. This dashboard right now is just looking at all students combined. And when we look at all the schools, we reduced the number of reds. In 2018 on the dashboard, we had 48 subgroups that had a red in a specific category. And then in 2019, that was this last year, reduced down to 25. So we had a reduction in 23 areas where we were red. And so that was one of our metrics, so we're really happy to see that reduction. And then at the district level, in 2018, we had 9. And this year we had 8, so we had a reduction of 1, so we're making some progress there at the district level. And we had a couple schools that had quite a few areas. Ukiah Elementary School had reduced their number of reds by 6, and Eagle Peak Middle School reduced their number of reds by 15. So we had some real high levels there, and that was great to see. We will be coming back. All this information on the dashboard is used to determine whether students are eligible for federal accountability. And those federal accountability systems are called comprehensive support and improvement or targeted support and improvement. We're not 100% sure, but we may have some schools moving into targeted support and improvement, but we think Pomalita Middle School will be moving out of that, and we will report as we get official results on that. There's rules, and I'm just interpreting those rules, and I'm not 100%. And also another school, Oak Manor Elementary School, we think has moved out. They were in for their students with disabilities. So we'll report back to you, but that's looking good. Yeah.
Lots of high fives.
Yeah.
Question.
Can I, so although that's awesome, am I wrong in my understanding that being in the whatever language we're using, the targeted support group, something like that, came with some additional funding?
So the additional funding only comes with the comprehensive support and improvement.
So if we move out of it, which is wonderful, and that's what we want.
Yes.
But are there budget adjustments that we need to be aware of in
Yes.
order to maintain what we were able to do with the funds?
That's
Okay.
correct, yes, and we will need,
$167,000.
yeah, we'll need to look at
For
what
either
programs
one or two
that's
schools.
supporting.
Sustaining those wonderful improvements they
Yes.
made to keep them out of.
Yep,
Okay.
yeah. students. It just is not ongoing funding, so.
They should give you an extra year.
I know,
Doesn't seem right.
so that you can really cement what you're doing.
That funding is very interesting. It does not matter your size. So Manchester Elementary, which
Also
has
gets like
35
$200,000.
students, is $167,000 like Pomalita.
That's a lot of money.
And
They
they're-
should be able
they
to
don't really know
transform.
how to use it because they're not used to having so much money.
Oh, my goodness.
Isn't that
Perhaps you could
crazy?
assist them with that.
I had a lot of ideas for that.
Question right now, trustee Nelson? Or later?
I'll do it now if you
All
don't mind.
right, go for it.
I was kind of surprised, and I just want to make sure that I'm reading this correctly. It says on one of the slides we were looking at, the number of EL students in Ukiah is 1,189 kids. So over a sixth of our population are English language learners.
26%.
Yeah, about 26%. We're actually having some demographic shifts a little bit. This year, we're at about 25.7%. We're seeing the decline in the number of ELs in the last couple years. We think one of the reasons is it could be because of the way students initially enroll online. And so we've looked into that and we put some measures in place to make sure we're following up and catching any students that maybe, there are English learners that it was just not clear on how to do it's a drop-down menu. I have met with, and we compared ourselves to other districts, 5 other districts that have similar, around 27%. And they also have been declining. We've declined at a little bit higher of a rate. But yeah, it was 29% and now we're down, you can see 26.8 and we're about 25, but we have about a quarter of our students.
One nice thing about these kind of presentations is it gives me an opportunity to learn more about our district. I knew that the improvement of our EL population was super important to us. We've talked about it a lot. I really didn't appreciate how much of that population what a big percentage of our school it is. Our teachers and the staff as a whole has just a ton to work for. That's really difficult. So.
And some of our elementary, just as students matriculate, they usually get reclassified. So at our elementary levels, some of our schools are at, 55, 49% English learners. So some of them are very high, so that's a big challenge for them. The other thing is our foster youth is 1.5%. That's pretty high when you look across the state. Currently, we have about 93 students that are foster youth, and our homeless numbers right now are about 240 students. You can look at other districts, they'll have higher homeless rates, but we definitely are up there with foster youth. And it seems to be sort of a trend in more rural areas that it's a higher rate. Humboldt County had a very high rate. It was like 2.2%. Or not Humboldt, but Eureka City Schools. So we do have, and you can see we're at about 80% low socioeconomically disadvantaged. So we have some challenges, but we have wonderful teachers and we're making progress. And we are also doing some really interesting work with our ed partners through a collaborative with lots of districts working on mathematics at the high school level. And we've done some deeper analysis of how we're doing with low socioeconomic students and Latino students, and we're typically below the state, but when we look at some of those subgroups, we're actually almost with the state. So not that we want to be there, we'd like to be higher, but at least we do see that we're doing well with some of our groups. So that's good to see. We have a long way to go, though.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Go for it.
Just not a question, but a comment. It's really lovely to see these reports. I'm just really happy. So thank you to your staff and to, more importantly, perhaps even all the teachers and all the staff that have been working so hard to produce these results. It's just really nice to see our investments are, paying off in terms of everybody's hard work, mostly. So
No red on the homepage. is
No,
huge.
it's awesome, and it's really
Huge.
great to see, I mean, even again, when, I like this is really nicely done, the dashboard, but it's really nice to go down and look a little deeper, and I was noticing the same thing, that for some of the subgroups, the state and our district are not too far off, and that's wonderful to see that, so, great, awesome.
Thank you. Anything else? No? Okay. Zooming right along here tonight. Superintendent's report?
Just a couple of things. On Friday, I went to Ukiah High School. Our county superintendent's meetings are rotating throughout the county. So last month, we were in Round Valley, and this month, we were at Ukiah High School. So we spent the whole day there, but the morning, they were really interested in learning more about our career technical education program. So we had two amazing FFA students come with us and tour us around. And at each classroom we visited, there were two students who greeted us and talked to us about what they were learning in class and what their plans were for the future. And Megan, thank you for your acknowledgement of the staff, just because every time I go and visit our schools, I'm just so impressed with what's going on in our classrooms. So we visited the medical terminology class, and the students were actually practicing CPR. And two wonderful students talked to us about what their future plans were next year. One wanted to be a pediatric surgeon, and another one wanted to be an RN. And so, and then we talked to two wonderful kids in the auto class, who one of them was talking about how he learned how to change a tire and a rim, and his cousin had a blowout on a tire, and he was able to help. So anyway, it was just really, really nice. And then we went into the child development class, where our students talked about, they were actually swaddling babies and changing diapers. They were learning how to do that. And that class is a dual enrolled class with Mendocino College. And it also has a component where the students are going to our elementary school to work with younger students, so at Frank Zeke. So it's just really heartwarming. And as I was sitting in a meeting, and I spend a lot of time in meetings, unfortunately, I could hear the band and choir in the cafetorium playing, and it sounded like a lovely concert. And the band director said to me that the reason why they do that concert is right now is a really stressful time for students with the holidays and finals and everything else, and they like the students to be able to just come and relax and watch their peers perform. So anyway, it's been just lovely. I always love our classrooms, but I especially love them during the holidays and what they offer to kids and families around that time. So lots of good stuff going on, and I hope everybody has a really nice holiday. So thank you to the board for all of your support, too.
Thank you, Superintendent Cuban. Any other reports from board members? Trustee Arkin, anything you want to share?
No?
Okay. Fernandez?
Sorry.
No. I'll just come this way? No?
This
Diaz?
is-
Trustee
have-
Diaz?
Have happy holidays for everyone.
Okay. Nothing?
Happy to be here.
Trustee Nelson?
No.
Okay. Trustee Barrett? You usually have something to share? No. Oh, my goodness. Trustee Massey? Save the board. Save them.
I don't have anything to add knowledge to the board.
I'm just throwing this out there, we're almost setting a record here, it's 7:30.
It's pretty amazing.
So hurry
Great progress.
All right, I'm going to talk for the next 32 minutes so that you still get out by 8 PM. All right, then. Okay. Some of us in our free time are working on the bond, and if you're interested in that, you can ask me about it after. We'll just say that. All right, then. Moving right along.
That's the first one.
Okay. Is there a motion to suspend the expulsion of student AA 12-16-2019 for the fall semester of 2019, the spring semester of 1920 school year?
I so move.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. And now we have good news, students being readmitted to Ukiah Unified. Do we have to do three separate motions? Can we do one motion stating all three?
You have to do 4 separate motions.
Okay, all right. Is there a motion to readmit student AA 12-16-2019?
I so move.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Is there a motion to readmit student BB 12-16-2019?
I so move.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Is there a motion to readmit student CC 12-16-2019?
I so move.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And finally, is there a motion to deny the readmission of student DD 12-16-2019, though the family may reapply for reinstatement for the fall of 2020?
I so move.
Second.
Motion and second is, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So we would now look for a motion to move the consent calendar minus H26.
I move acceptance, approval of the consent calendar with the exception of H26.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Is there a motion for consent calendar H26?
I so move.
I'll second.
All those in favor of H26?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstention, no, upset.
Trustee Arkin abstains from the vote on H26. Planning. Is there anything that board members would like to see on a future agenda or a future TGIF, in case we reject the fact that we don't want it on the agenda? One question that we had brought up a few times was the issue of the Personnel Commission and if they're able to be making progress toward the most efficient hiring that we can get. So we had talked about.
We did.
Seeing if there were any recommendations or discussion, and I'm not sure what format that needs to take. But anybody else want to weigh in on that?
That sounds familiar to me, and perhaps the superintendent has a suggestion. Would that be something to bring back to the board?
We could do a report to the board on, just a more detailed report on classified hiring. And let you know what new practices the Personnel Commission has put in place to try and recruit employees. So possibly, would March be okay to do that? Or is that too late? I'm just looking at our spring calendar with strategic planning and other things. If you need it sooner, that would be fine. January will be difficult because of the holidays. That's why I was thinking March.
I'm not opposed to March, but if there are investments or directions that the board needs to weigh in on in order to improve things, I don't know if that would be too late. So that would be the.
So we'll talk about it. We'll put it at the latest in March.
Okay.
But it will not be January. So we'll go for February or March.
Any other topics in terms of planning? Okay. Trustee Arkin?
So will we get a little report on the bond in January?
Yes.
That's it.
Great.
Agenda planning?
So the next regular meeting is January 16th, so agenda planning will be on Wednesday, January 8th.
I haven't done it in a few months, I'd like to do it. That's okay.
Only if you bring me a birthday present.
Is that your birthday?
Is it actually May the 8th? It is, isn't it?
It is.
That would be fun.
I could do the 8th.
Carolyn, good.
Okay, Carolyn, Trustee Barrett and trustee Fernandez. Let me, before we terminate, let me ask the board, would the board mind if I reopened public comment just for a moment? Because I see we have some members of the public who arrived, and they might be shocked at the quickness of our meeting, and they might have thought that they were getting here in time to make public comment.
Oh, if we wanted to make public comment? can we do
If they, I'm not sure if they do or not, but I didn't want to ask them if they did before I asked you, because if they say yes and then you say no, then I've really embarrassed
that? Really
everyone.
true. Can we do that? Deb?
Is there a comment card
Yeah.
that's been submitted?
Perhaps there is no interest for agenda H7. Right, we already
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
We're like done, we're about to go home.
We're finished.
That's why I thought maybe I should say something. Would you mind hearing a few comment,
I
there
know.
could be, we did already vote on it, but
I mean, yeah, we just,
can we do not to exceed 5 minutes?
Yes, I would, I'm fine
Thank
with
you.
that.
Thank you for indulging me. So if there is public comment on H7, even though we have already voted in favor, we would love to hear your public comment not to exceed 5 minutes.
But she turned the paper to.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I was home watching it on TV. I don't know how I missed that. So
We
did
are
you?
pretty scintillating entertainers up here, I can see how that could happen.
Did you vote on it already?
We did.
Okay. Well, I don't know if this would have made a difference. So, good evening. My name is Susan Scher, and I did have a few comments. Some of you may recall with Eric Summer, I made a quick PowerPoint presentation on the problem of idling cars at the elementary schools and,
Yes.
and the high school. That was last spring. And we were very gratified that Superintendent Kubin, you put an article on the front page of the newsletter, and you, I guess, after that, you brought up these the Green School Operations Board Policy for revision. So we've been really encouraged that you folks are taking this seriously and you're walking the talk, and there hopefully will be some changes. Unfortunately, I was curious what was happening at the elementary schools since the signs were put up. And it was very disappointing, I have to say. I visited just today, because I knew I was coming to this meeting, I went by Oak Manor at dismissal time. A few weeks ago, I went to Grace Hudson and Ukiah, and despite the signs, the cars are still lined up. And I just did a very quick count today at Oak Manor. There were about 50 cars, and about 45 of them had the engines running the whole time. So, I guess people are just very attached to their cars, and they don't want to turn their engines off. It's a really fascinating psychological study. In my view, I think, if I could make this decision, I think the best course of action would be to have parents and guardians park and get out of their cars and walk and greet their children. A lot of the parents do that. If they all went online, it would be twice as bad, but probably I would guess about half of them park every school has a lot of parking spaces available, so there are, it would be a 5-minute walk, and those parents get out a lot sooner. I was curious, I asked some of those folks, why do you park rather than line up? And the answer was always the same. I don't want to get stuck on that line, and I get out a lot faster. So, I know that you'd probably irritate a lot of parents who don't want to get out of their cars, but we have relatively mild weather, except maybe in the early fall and the late spring. But my personal feeling is I think that would be a great solution to have people get out of their cars and not be idling for 20 to 40 minutes. It occurred to me, and I'm curious, I know you can't answer this, but I just wanted to put this out as just a topic maybe for the future. How many children are getting driven by their parents who have access to bus service? And I wonder if, I hear the scuttlebutt is it's not cool to ride the school bus, that it's like a socioeconomic thing, that kids have some shame about riding the bus. I don't know how many kids this applies to, but I'm wondering if there are more than a handful of children who could be on the bus but are getting driven, and if they took the bus, we could have fewer cars coming to the schools. So I know you can't answer that, but I just wanted to put that out. It also, I heard a rumor that the district has air quality meters. And I should have mentioned I'm affiliated with Climate Action Mendocino, and we'd be very curious to measure the air quality before all the parents arrive for dismissal time and then when they do arrive, and see if there's a stark difference in the quality of the air. I would venture to guess there is, but it would be really good to have that data. And just my only other comment on the policy, which has been approved already, number 11, we were really glad to see integrating green school practices and activities into the educational program by providing instruction to students. So we've had some members of Climate Action Mendocino go to the schools and give some lessons on climate change. 1 minute? Okay. And, I hope you use this as a resource. We have some folks, including the next speaker, who have been to the schools, who are some retired teachers who are great with kids and found the experience very satisfying. So I hope you would use us as a resource, and I hope this policy can, as good as it is, if it could get more teeth, that would be fabulous. So thank you for giving me this time.
You're very welcome, and then we received a letter recently as well. And so Superintendent Cuban will be responding to all of that.
Oh, great.
Hi. Welcome. I didn't know that.
Oh, do you
Yes,
not
are.
have time for another one?
Not to exceed 5 minutes.
It was 4:40,
Perfect.
20 seconds left.
So talk fast, huh? I get 5 minutes, right? But not a half a minute.
It's up to the chair.
Ah, okay. Whatever.
Okay. Board, what do you have for?
I would suggest brief comments, if she's already here. It's an early night, that would be my
I'll try to be
suggestion.
fast.
Okay.
In fact, I was going to practice speed talking. I may be the one that sent the letter because I sent, probably 15 suggestions, and they're all here, so I don't really need to say too much except speed talk. Thank you for allowing us to talk. This is embarrassing because I thought we were so together. And thank you so much for this column on green school, the green school policy. Thanks so much for the procedure on green composting. We went to see it, Climate Action Mendocino went to see it at Frank Zeke last year, and I'm assuming all the schools have it this year. That's what was planned anyway. And that is absolutely fabulous. It was wonderful watching those kids at Frank Zeke just compost away. EV buses, I'm a volunteer at Redwood Valley Outdoor Ed and get to see the EV bus. Thanks for the no idling signs. I understand there's an agriculture grant, and that's fabulous too. I'm hoping that that agriculture grant will bring in some knowledge about regenerative agriculture and organic use of fertilizers rather than non-OMRI approved herbicides and pesticides and fertilizers. What Deborah Edelman did at Ukiah High School, wouldn't that be nice to get done at most of the schools? I'm an educator. It's fun to be at a school. I've never been in front of the Ukiah Unified School District, but it's when I was a principal in Santa Rosa, we had the upper grades go around and collect recycling every Friday afternoon and take it to a recycling box. I'm not sure how much of that gets done, but wow, what an easy thing to do, and the kids were on it and responsible. Let's see, I would like to encourage drought-tolerant plants, natives, hopefully, where you're planting for carbon sequestration and certainly shade. I know someone came to talk at another time about single-use plastic, but my goodness, you know, these plastic water bottles that people have we should all have our own water bottle.
I have mine, I just.
And I'm the one that's done the lessons in the classrooms on climate change. Most of the kids, when I do a lesson on climate change, know nothing about climate change. They've just heard the words. And as much as possible, if we could have a climate change curriculum where at least they find out what it is and what greenhouse gases are and this recycling or the idling business, I'm certainly willing to go with Susan or a monitor with a child and monitor the air quality. And maybe the principals could put that data in the newsletter, and that might convince even more people. Last two things I want to say are that there's a wonderful program, Zero Waste. I don't know if you've been in touch with her, Heather Guevara out of Fort Bragg. And she's going all over the county telling people how to manage life without waste. So you could have her come into schools, do an assembly. She's free, she's fabulous, and she takes about 10 minutes. And the other person is Lindsay McCullough at CNS Waste. And she's wonderful about recycling. She'd love to do assemblies. If you need any help with any of this, please contact me. We are climateactionmendocino@gmail.com, and thanks for your indulgence.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Anything else for the good of the education? No, then we are adjourned. Thank you.